Hi, my name is Natalie and welcome to my channel. I am an artist, a small artist, located in Tennessee at this time, and this video is just going to be a quick overview of all the things that you need to oil paint and just how I go about the process, because I've seen a lot of creators that are trying to get into oils and they're a little intimidated because they are completely different than acrylics. They are still paint, but they work very differently and the process is very different. So join me for this video where I'm just going to show you my process and the things that I use and what I believe you need to start an oil painting journey. I'm going to go over some things that I wish I knew before I started oil painting. I painted with acrylics for a very long time, but in college I started taking actual painting classes where they taught me how to use oils, how the process works, and how to do it correctly. One thing that I wish I knew before I started painting at all, there are different types of canvases and the different types of depths. The depth of your canvas can really take you from an amateur or hobby artist into someone who looks far more professional. This is a 3/4 depth canvas. Hey girl. Before I started taking painting classes and I was just kind of painting on my own, this is the only canvas that I knew existed. Hi Pepper. Something that really took my paintings to the next level was getting gallery edge canvases, which as you can see are closer to a full inch. These canvases aren't even the deepest ones that exist. There are actual like curated level canvases that are even deeper than this. They're closer to 2.5, maybe even 3 inches. That is an estimate. I don't actually know what they are because I don't use them, because that's a really deep canvas. You can get these in all kinds of sizes. The one we're going to be working on today is this big. This is little 6x8. Isn't she cute? Yeah. We love her. Obviously you can use any canvas you'd like, but I just thought I'd throw that out there because that is something I wish I knew when I started taking my painting more seriously. Now, before I even talk about actual paint, I want to talk about this guy, because do not even go buy oil paint unless you have this. This is odorless mineral spirits. I got this one from Walmart, I think, and I think it was like at $7. The fumes are very potent, right? So odorless really helps decrease the amount of fumes you have to deal with while you're working, which is really nice. To pair with this guy, you are going to need a jar. You definitely need to use glass. I do not recommend using plastic when working with mineral spirits because mineral spirits eats plastic. We'll talk about that later when we get into brushes because I have had some issues with plastic brushes. It is safe to use with synthetic paintbrush bristles, which I think is really interesting, so you don't need to have natural brushes to work with mineral spirits. Solid glass jar and a lid as well to help keep it from evaporating. And I'm going to show you my actual jar. I'm a really bad artist when it comes to taking care of my paintbrushes and cleaning them every time I use them because I paint almost every day. So cleaning my brushes every day just feels a bit much to me. That's the type B artist in me. Not catch me cleaning my brushes every single time I use them. My paintings would probably be better if I did, but you can only ask so much, right? Essentially, the way you're going to use mineral spirits is almost like water when it comes to your brushes. So when you use a brush, paint with it, love it, and then you're going to put it into your mineral spirits and tap it around to get the excess pigment off your brush. Mineral spirits works really well for keeping pigment off your brushes, and then if you want to just use it again, you can just pull your brush out, dab it on a rag to get the excess mineral spirits off, and then you can continue using the same brush and you can switch between colors. One thing that you really have to remember with mineral spirits is you cannot, absolutely 100% cannot put it down the drain. This is very serious. Do not put mineral spirits in your plumbing in your home down a drain. Let's start talking about something slightly more interesting. Not much, but a little bit. So this is an oil painting medium. Mediums are also really important and really helpful when it comes to oil painting, especially if you're painting in layers, which that's how I paint. I paint in layers. So this is the Winsor & Newton Oil Color Medium Liquid Original. So the great thing about this guy is not only does it thin your paints out a little bit and create transparency, but also it decreases your drying time, which if you're working with oils is a great thing to do, because one thing we love about oils is that they do have an increased drying time, but if you can decrease it just a little bit, it is a little bit more convenient. Other mediums that you can use for oil paints, I don't like to use them as much because they actually can increase your drying time, meaning it takes longer for your paintings to dry and cure and all those fun things, is linseed oil and several other oils such as sunflower oils. One thing you need to keep in mind when working with oil paints, especially if you're using a lot of mediums, is they're very, very flammable. And some of them, including this guy, can put off some pretty nasty fumes. Do not oil paint in a small enclosed space that has no ventilation. If you need to, you can run fans, you can open windows. Just make sure you're in an open space that has adequate ventilation for all these fumes because they can be dangerous. Let's talk about tools. When it comes to brushes, some people can be really picky. I'm not picky. I literally have sad little craft brushes because you never know what you're gonna need. Here's a list of brushes that I think you should grab when you are getting ready to start your oil painting journey, just so you have what you need to do almost anything. My first recommendation is this guy. This is a liner brush. This might look incredibly tiny and ridiculous, but believe it or not, this is the best way to get straight, fine lines with paint, and it's because you actually have a lot more control with those longer little bristles. So I highly recommend getting a liner brush. This is a 0 by Master Touch, and this is a script liner. So you can get these at Hobby Lobby. I do think they have them at Michael's as well, and maybe even Walmart. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have this guy. This guy will be very useful for underpainting or just laying down, you know, base colors, getting the values done very quickly so that you can let them dry and move on to more detailed pieces. This is also a Master's Touch brush, and it is a 1.5 flat. My next suggestion, as you can see, I have 3 different brush shapes here. I have a round, I have a flat, and I also have a rounded flat, which I know is a little bit confusing, and just diversifying these shapes that you have because they're all great for different things, such as the flat being really good for laying down edges, borders, or outlining things that you're gonna fill in later. This guy can really just be good for laying down values and shading, especially blending if you're into that. Some people aren't into blending. I love to blend, but you know, a lot of people don't like to take the time, but you could try it if you wanted. And then of course just a classic round, which is very versatile and just really helpful. And it'll also just be great for doing curved linear lines and anything that's less geometric. Now that we have covered the items that I believe that you need before you start your oil painting journey, I'm actually going to walk you through the process of how I go through my oil painting journey and how I complete my pieces. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is underpaintings and why they're important. I don't have any pieces that are in the just underpainting stage, so I'm just going to show you this guy because it's one of the ones that I'm working on right now where you can most clearly see the underpainting and how it plays into the development of the piece. Why is the background pink, you might ask? So behind all of the other pigments I have added on top, there's a layer of pink underneath everything. That is the first layer of paint you put on the canvas. You cover the whole thing in pink. Is because we were trying to avoid those pesky little white spots that can happen sometimes on canvases. It's like little salt specks of white that peek through the paint because, you know, bubbles happen, things shift, move. So to avoid that, a great thing to do is to do an underpainting, which is just to pick a color. I use pink because pink is known to really brighten up the background of your pieces. If you just use straight up paint to do that, it will take a very long time to dry. We're talking 1 to 2 days, okay? So a great hack to do to decrease the drying time, remember that, decrease your drying time, and to also maybe shear out the color a little bit so you don't have to use as much paint, is our best friend right here. So what I like to do is I will mix my underpainting color with this guy and just cover the whole painting. And I kid you not, it'll be dry in a couple hours, which is great when it comes to oil paint. I know if you paint in acrylics, you're like, a couple hours? That's crazy. And I'm like, no girl, that's great actually. I'm gonna give you some recommendations for bright pink oil paints because they are actually pretty rare and kind of hard to find with a chroma as bright as I like to use. So the first one I have is this Master Touch oil color in fluorescent pink. I believe I got this from Michael's, and at the time I bought it, it was $5.99. I actually don't want to recommend this one because it does come out kind of chunky and a little bit separated, but it is cheap, and that's the reason I bring it up. This little tube right here, this is Michael Harding Handmade Artist oil color in Upper Rose. This was $22. It is 40 milliliters. $22. It is a great color though, and it is great for underpaintings, and it's a great paint. So this is the one I recommend for quality purposes, but for price, that's a lot. After underpainting, we are going to fill in our biggest values. Here I have a piece that I've worked on for about a day, so I started this one yesterday, and my underpainting I used for this one was blue. After I did my underpainting and I let that dry, I just went in and I added my values. So this is a brick building, and so I laid down a layer of titanium buff because the mortar of the building is this kind of cream color, and I'm going to put stonework over it And then this here is a large patch of greenery, specifically a very flowery bush. I go ahead and paint the edges because unfortunately a piece looks so much better when the edges are painted, even though I hate doing it. This is what the end of step 2 will look like once you have your biggest values filled in. Pulling you in a bit closer just so you can kind of see the setup. I am working at a desk with this tabletop pop-up easel. I wish I had a big easel, but those cost money. I use my iPad for my reference images. This is a photo I took while I was in Pompeii. So this is what I'm going off of for my piece. I just like to put them next to each other just so I can work pretty seamlessly and so I can get my values as accurately as possible with the proportions. Because I don't work with a grid, so this just helps me having them side by side. And I do understand that not everyone has an iPad or something like that, and I'm not telling you to go out and buy one if you're doing this as a hobby, but if you have a cell phone that has a photo on it that you want to do, or if you just want to use your laptop, those are also great ways to have reference images. If you have access to a printer, you can even print it out so that you can have them side by side. Some artists definitely recommend using a picture, like a printed picture, instead of a digital photo, just because the light can get a little bit altered here and there. Whatever's accessible and works best for you is fine. If you're working from your noggin instead of using a reference image, it's always a really good idea to sketch it out, either using a sketchbook where you can sketch it out on the sketchbook and then kind of do a similar side by side where you can have your sketch on one side and your painting on the other, or you can use a pencil and just sketch it on your canvas before you start. A great tip for when you're sketching on a canvas for underneath a painting is to use colored pencils. Colored pencils tend to hide a little bit better under layers of paint. Graphite pencils tend to stand out. That doesn't mean you can't use them, but that just means it may take more layers to cover them. One more important thing that I actually almost forgot about is palette knives. So you can get plastic ones or you can get metal ones like these, depends on how serious you are. These are just for mixing your paints. They're very important and very helpful. Trying to mix your paint with brushes all the time is not very effective or efficient. A lot of times paint of 2 different colors will get stuck in your brush and not mix correctly the way you need it to. So something like this, you could even use a fork or a knife or a plastic fork or something that you have in your house, or a stick. You can go outside and get a stick.
So for the final section of this video, I'm going to go over the next layer I'm adding to this piece. I'm just darkening the shadows using a dark blue over this dioxazine purple to really create some depth, as well as mixing a light gray that I'm going to use to add the bricks to the interior wall of the doorway. These are going to have a more dark tone than the exterior, so I have to mix it very carefully to make sure it's not too dark. And here I am adding those interior bricks, making sure that I keep my lines pretty precise as I am going to be adding the actual outline of the bricks with this liner brush, exactly what I said we'd use it for. Highly recommend getting one of these. It's really helpful. It's probably the best thing I've ever done for my paintings. And once again, using my trusty liner brush, I'm going to add the stonework to this wall with this darker gray over the titanium buff, just so I can lay out where my stones are and track them correctly. And I mixed in a nice little green that's a little bit lighter than the green that I had before, because I'm just going to go ahead and block out these upper branches, as well as make sure I block out where my highlights in my greenery are going to be. This greenery does overlap the wall a little bit, so it is going to connect that way as well. And to continue building my depth and shadows, I'm going in with a dark blue again into the deeper parts of my greenery, and I'm just going to continue to add value to those spaces, avoiding the parts that I added the lighter green, as those are going to be my most focal points, and I want to make sure that they stand out against this darker background within the greenery. Ironically, I'm actually going to use that pink paint that I said I would not recommend earlier to block out where some of my flowers are going to start being, as there will be more depth to the flowers, so there will be some maroon and other colors added, but I just wanted to add them in where they're going to be so that I know I'm tracking correctly.
Now what's really crazy is I am not going to let you sit here and watch me finish this entire painting, because that will take literally days. Days and days and days, and I don't have the attention span to do a whole video like that. But if you are interested in seeing this finished piece, you can check it out on my website on September 15th, because I am releasing a whole new oil painting collection on September 15th, and it will feature some amazing pieces. You can also check out my Instagram, Studio Maltree, to see those pieces before they go on sale. Thank you for watching my video, and subscribe if you'd like to see more of this in the future, more tutorials, more projects I'm working on, and just more of me. My name is Natalie. Signing off. Goodbye.